Welcome to the video. This is how to escape the 9 to 5 through property investing. And my goal for this video is to get you from feeling like you're stuck in your 9 to 5, to eliminate that feeling that you're working hard, but your salary will never buy you the lifestyle you want. Freedom always just seems out of reach. Maybe you've followed the advice of financial advisors, invested in stocks or crypto, or even pinned your hopes on a promotion. But deep down, you know it's risky and unpredictable. What if there was a smarter, simpler, more reliable path to financial freedom, one that actually works and that you can implement while you continue to work your current job, creating a second income that gives you the space to make the transition that you want? This video is going to be a complete and comprehensive guide to take you from total newbie to confident investor. And I want you to not only watch, but react to this video in a way that no other property course will ever enable you to. There's going to be no more spending your time and money listening to people that frankly only care about the fee that they are charging you and not about your success. I want to blow these businesses, the scammers and the charlatans, out of the water. So what that also means is that this is going to be quite a long video. If you can commit to watching this video all the way through, my goal is that you will walk away with the knowledge, the confidence, and the clarity to decide how you want to start investing and even take the first steps towards your first property investment. Now, don't panic. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is the exact steps that I took to retire when I was 48. And I can tell you from over 20 years of experience, no, I'm not 68, over 20 years of experience working with my clients and from my own journey, that you can generate just enough income to cover your essentials, secondary to your salary, and then you can gain the freedom, the confidence to make better decisions about the life you really want. But here's the hard truth. Most of us were taught that working hard in a corporate job would secure our future. Yet pensions are shrinking, wages are falling behind inflation, and the rising cost of living is quietly eroding your savings. Think about this for a minute. 60% of adults have no second income. And while 40% are busy trying to do a side hustle, over half of those aren't making any money either. So that means a collective 80% of people in the UK have no second income. They are trapped selling their time for money with no escape in sight. Add to which 11 million people in the country don't even have £100 in savings. And here's the kicker about retirement. Pensions are shrinking and women are already retiring with 40% less pension wealth than men. Meanwhile, lovely, we're all living longer. Post-60 retirement could last as much as 20 or 30 years, maybe even more. And if you can earn 6 figures in your salary right now, the cost of living is still quietly stealing your future and your freedom. So relying solely on a salary and a pension, even a private pension, isn't just risky. It could be putting your lifestyle, your financial future, and the options that you want at risk. Therefore, exploring alternative income streams like property investment isn't just smart, it's essential. By taking control of your money today, you can build passive cash flow that grows in the background while you're still working your job. You can reclaim your time and create the financial independence you deserve through this second income. Now, if that sounds good, and I'd like it to sound good to you, I'd encourage you to bookmark this video, to add it to your favorites first, and maybe to subscribe to the channel if you want to. Now, let me be clear. As I've said, this is not a high-risk, get-rich-quick scheme. This is proven, predictable, cash flow-focused strategy. And I personally retired 6 years after I started property investing. How? Through smart, leveraged property investments. And now I live a life where I focus on time freedom and location freedom. I have maybe 1 month holidays, I work a 3-day week, and all the while I'm creating a living legacy for my family. I've been featured in the Telegraph as one of the top 25 most influential people in property. I've written 5 books and I've co-authored many more. I now run a podcast with over 200 episodes, all while supporting my clients to live a wealthy life. and I want to help you create yours. Imagine this for a moment. What if today was a pivot point? The day you started to design the life you really want, rather than letting a life be designed for you. Over the next 2 hours, I want to help you understand your options. I want you to be able to ask better questions. And maybe this will feel a little uncomfortable as you start to recognize what's really going on. But you know knowledge is power, right? And of course, I'm going to help you recognize how by leveraging your resources, you can build a second income, and with that, both financial security and choice. But I want to be clear here. I'm not knocking your employer. I'm not knocking your choices or your pension for that matter. But corporations exist to satisfy the shareholder. And your life and your choices deserve that same focus. And that's where property comes in. Because turning your underutilized financial resources into those little brick banks that I love can really fund your future freedom now and forever. You might be asking yourself, well, how much is this going to take to start investing? How much of my time will it take? How long until I can see the results? And am I even the right person to do this? Don't worry, I'm going to cover all of that. So you're going to have the knowledge and the confidence and the ability to build the freedom to work and retire on your terms. In this course, you're going to discover why now is the perfect time to take control of your finances, to scale back work or retire earlier. You're going to grow your investments in the background, and that's going to give you the time, the choice, and the financial security that you need to make those steps towards transition. I'm going to help you react to this video. Let me take you through that. Reevaluate. Get clear on your current financial situation, your spending habits, and your long-term goals so that you understand the impact of inflation and see where strategic investments could make a real difference. You're going to explore. You're going to discover new possibilities to make your money work harder and turn your savings into reliable cash flow through property investment that will supplement your salary and help you build resilience without being tied to that 9 to 5. We're going to explore approaches, identify the investment techniques that fit your lifestyle and your risk tolerance. Whether that's buy-to-let, HMOs, flips, serviced accommodation, you're going to be able to choose the path that aligns with your goals, and you're going to do that from a position where you understand the level of involvement, the level of risk, and the time that each approach is going to require from you so that you can choose to invest with confidence. And then we're going to choose. You're going to be able to make informed decisions to create a portfolio that supports your long-term vision. Rather than chasing trends, you're going to identify the level of support and guidance that you need so that you can move forward. And lastly, I'm going to get you to turn all this theory into action, to implement what you've learned, from tax to timing, from tenants to turnover. I want you to turn knowledge into real cash flow and long-term wealth. Now, the show notes that accompany this video will guide you through the chapters in this course and will help you track your process, making it easier to use the resources that I've created for you so that you can build your own property portfolio. As I've said, please make sure that you bookmark this video. And if you have YouTube Premium, why not download the video right now so that you can watch it at your own pace? I've also created a workbook for you, so please make sure that you download that. You'll be able to pick up the exercises as you go along. It might be easier than printing it out in full to actually just print out those pages that you need. And as I said earlier, if you want to subscribe or give me a thumbs up, please do. So that way you're always going to be able to access this video. And what about introducing yourself in the comments? Why not give us a thumbs up and let us know that you're here and ready to take your financial future into your own hands. And by introducing yourself into the community, we'll start to get to know one another. By the end of this course, you'll understand how property offers tangible control, regular cash flow, and long-term growth in a way that pensions and stocks simply can't compete. And you'll have the tools and the confidence to start investing even alongside a full-time job. All of this while enjoying your family and your social life. Now let's dive into the first section where we'll dig into 2 critical truths. Why corporate jobs often fail to provide that long-term financial independence, and the hidden traps of inflation, stagnant pay, and the illusion of job security that go along with it. And second, the reality of retirement, the traditional way, why relying solely on a pension and a wage packet won't give you the lifestyle or the freedom that you deserve. And why diversification, particularly into property, is essential. And by the end of this first section, you'll recognize the stark contrast between passively relying on your employer and proactively creating a life of financial independence. You'll be ready to move into the next phase, improving your mindset, understanding your money, and exploring why diversifying into investments like property isn't just smart, it's essential. So, shall we get started? So now that we've acknowledged the reality that depending on just a pay packet and a pension alone may not give you the life that you want, I want to really convince you that change is necessary. Granted, everyone's circumstances are different, but the common thread is salary. Let me take you through some of the really thought-provoking facts and get you to ask yourself some tough questions about what the world of work and retirement could look like for you. Trust me, this section is going to change the way you think and provide momentum to make the changes that you know you really want in your life and in your personal finances. Are you relying on your employer to provide for your future? There is a hidden financial trap that comes with corporate life. You have little or no control over your earnings. The truth is, a salary keeps you locked in a cycle of trading your time for money without ever building lasting wealth. If you don't work, you don't get paid, hence the trap. Yet you've done nothing wrong. In fact, you've done everything right. You've done everything you were told to. You left school, you maybe went to university, you got a good job. Live happily ever after. How's that working out? The myth that worked out for our parents and our grandparents just isn't enough because there are so many opportunities from travel and adventure to escaping the 9-to-5 grind. The stress and the pressure that comes with work, you can leave it behind in a way that our parents never could. And of course, job security is an illusion. With the introduction of increasing AI programs that can do the lowly jobs like warehousing, all the way up to the sacred jobs of accounting, surgery, even being a lawyer, layoffs, redundancy, and automation is inevitable, and it could strike at any time. In fact, predict for yourself, where will you be in the next 2 to 3 years? How secure is your role? When we add in the financial reality that at the time of recording, inflation in the UK is at the highest it's been for 18 months, 3.8%. Now, add into that according to the London School of Economics, the LSE, the UK has experienced significant wage stagnation, particularly since all the way back in 2008, when there was the financial crisis. Real wages, when adjusted for inflation, have just stagnated over the last 15 years. You've had no salary increase in any real time, and that's quietly eroding your savings. Since the start of the pandemic and the Ukraine war, and of course Brexit before that, we've seen prices continually rising. When you combine all of this together, the wage stagnation with inflation, what you're getting is this up and down, and it's called stag from stagnation and then flation from inflation. Look how good I write. Stagflation. In the second quarter of 2025, unemployment in the UK has risen to a whopping 4.8%. And that's before we get in to AI. That's before we're adding in the budget crisis. And on top of all of that, if that's not enough, inflation rising, wages effectively falling, we've got stagflation and increasing unemployment, your life clock is ticking. And if you were putting off your freedom for retirement, what happens when you reach 60 years old and you realise that you waited too long to live the life you want? Do you even know what you want? What you really, really want, as the Spice Girls would say. But even if you're relying on your salary, that it would give you enough to retire when you want, what about the myths of retirement? How do they work out in the modern world? We were taught to trust our pensions, to trust the government. Well, how's that working out for you? Think about the WASPy women, all paid in good faith, and now their pensions are being delayed. The government has already been forced to increase the retirement age to account for and accommodate the cost of all the baby boomers that are coming through. And this is where most people get a hit of harsh reality. And let's take a look. You already have limited control over your current earnings. A salary keeps you in that cycle of earning and spending that very few people ever build long-term cash-flowing assets from. And I'm sure you can admit that we're starting to recognise the fact that job security is an illusion. Layoffs, redundancies, and automation risks have all started to demonstrate that your corporate safety net isn't as safe as it seemed. And who really wants to sign up to delayed life satisfaction? I'm not even sure you're experiencing real life satisfaction now. So if you're only planning to live later whenever that retirement finally is granted, you have to start asking yourself, how long will you want to wait to enjoy your life? And what, almost more importantly, what happens if circumstances change? If there are job losses, continued wage erosion, and real-time inflation? Why doing nothing could destroy the life you've dreamed of. Let's take a deeper look at why relying on a pension alone is a high-risk strategy and why taking control of your financial future isn't an option anymore. Think about pension shortfalls for a minute. Most people's pensions are not enough to maintain their current lifestyle. They're calculated on the fact that your mortgage will be paid off and that you will be just sitting at home. That's old-fashioned. Even 65 is not old. We've not had the physical jobs that our grandparents had, and yet many financial advisors are still stuck in that limited thinking. Don't you want holidays and fun? Maybe to spend time with grandchildren, or to discover and enjoy a hobby, a passion, or even a mission in life. Maybe you want to start a new business. That takes money. We all know, though very few of us do anything about it, the fact that women will retire with 40% less pension than men. And that, combined with an increasing life expectancy and the fact that women already live longer than the men, means that there is a tough life after that period that you've given to the corporate world, on, of course, a promise of happier times. That increasing life expectancy translates into a post-retirement that could last in excess of 20 to 30 years. Is your pension going to give you enough money? Because therein lies the danger. Pensions were actually honestly designed to pay out just after or just before the average life expectancy of the time. It was a clear trick by employers to avoid having to pay out to the entire population through retirement. The problem for our government is that we're living a lot longer, and for some people, a lot longer than they can afford. Almost everyone in employment now has a workplace pension. But how much will it really produce? And what will it be worth in reality when you retire? You know that you're going to get about £1,000 out of the state pension. And now you're being fed into the false hope that your workplace pension will give you the money that you want. And that's why you need an investment vehicle that not only leverages your money, but keeps pace with inflation and the lifestyle that you want. I've already touched on the problem of inflation. Even careful savers will see their wealth slowly disappearing in real terms. Whether stagflation gets you, the Chancellor, or the investment vehicle you choose, you need it to work for you now and in the uncertain future. I think we can all admit that a corporate salary alone is no longer enough to guarantee you the life that you want. But unlike stocks or pensions, which are broadly out of your control and are volatile, property investment, if you have a clear financial strategy, can give you real control over your future. If done right, it can offer a predictable monthly cash flow, leverage your cash through purposeful lending, and survive long enough for real-term, long-term growth. So now you know the truth about relying on a 9-to-5 salary and even your pension. And you know you need to understand the risks to your finances and your options. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Depending on a corporate salary, a substantial pension, and I don't even mean a state pension, all of that needs a thorough rethink. Maybe you're financially okay. You have enough. Maybe you even have more than enough already. But are you sure? I told you at the start of this there was going to be a workbook that you could use to make notes or even create your own action plan. Make sure you download it now. There's a link in the show notes and you'll be able to access it from there. Now, before you rush off and start filling it in, please make sure to save this video and subscribe if you want to so that you can find your way back. Many people will hesitate here. They'll think, I don't have enough money, or I'm not cut out for investing, or simply I'm too busy. Maybe even worse, I'll be all right. My IFA is taking care of everything. The time to stop abdicating your financial future to someone else who frankly doesn't care about you is over. But here's the truth. The only thing standing between you and your financial independence is actually your own mindset. That, obviously, and a clear strategy so that you can make your money work for you instead of the other way around. But let's move on from the re-evaluating of the financial landscape to the next section where we'll explore how to shift your mindset from employee thinking to investor thinking, to take control of your money and start building that reliable income stream that will work for you so that you don't have to quit your job if you don't want to. The key insight I want you to gain from this next section is the realization that you have the power to radically change your life for the better in as little as the next 3 to 5 years. Interested? How can you provide for yourself when you're not your employer's priority? Now that you understand why relying on your salary and your pension might not give you the life you want, it's time to ask a critical question. What can you actually do about it? In this section, we're going to shift your mindset from employee thinking to investor thinking, recognizing and overcoming the mental barriers like fear, self-doubt, perfectionism, even guilt. I want you to understand why property is the most effective investment for time-poor professionals above all other forms of investment. And that's because cash flow and control matter more than chasing capital growth or even gambling on a volatile stock or crypto market. The ultimate goal for you on this course is to develop a strategic and personalized plan that will leave you prepared to take your finances forward, to understand your risk tolerance, and to learn how to start building a reliable second income now. And maybe you're thinking, I don't have enough money. Maybe you're seeing that even small calculated investments could compound into long-term wealth. That's what I want for you. Maybe you're thinking, I don't know enough about property. And that's why this course is for you. By the end, I will have shared all the education, the frameworks, the real-world case studies that you need to build your confidence and get you to a position where you can start. Maybe you're thinking, I don't have the time. Well, we'll focus on strategies that will let you grow your income without sacrificing either your job, your family, or your social life. By the end of this section, you'll not only see the possibilities, but your mindset and your money mindset will be primed to take those first steps forward to real financial autonomy. Whether it's failure, self-doubt, perfectionism, imposter syndrome even, or guilt, they can all be holding you back from what you really want, the future you want. And that's preventing you from transitioning to becoming an investor. You win at what you do and what you know. And I want you to let me help you win at property. I start this next exercise with all of my clients. And the question is simple. What matters to you most? Because if in the end you spend your time doing what you love with those that matter, that's all that life is, isn't it, really? And if you can't answer that question, what matters most, then the next step is almost impossible. So I created something called the Values Manual. I've put a link to this in the workbook for you so that you can download it. And I'm just going to take you through the exercise now so that you understand how to do this. So what I'm going to do is show you how to start thinking about what matters to you, turn them into values, and then prioritize them. So let's go. When we look at the workbook, what I'm going to do is get you to start making a note of times when you felt happy, fulfilled, successful. Please don't just pick work, pick at home life as well. And from that, we're going to start circling words that stand out. So let me give you an example. I swam in a lake. So bear with me while I write all of this down. I'm only going to do it in abbreviation. You're going to write as much detail as you can because that's where the words are going to come out. So I swam in a lake. Oh, spelling mistake already. Swam in a lake. I grew tomatoes. Oh my gosh, you should see my tomatoes. There'll be a video on that one day. I visited cenotes with Bob. Cenotes plus Bob. And I bought a new property. So we'll put a picture of a house because that'll save me writing a whole essay there. And I bought a new house for us. And I've also bought a new house for our clients. So there's me and Bob. And there's my clients. Now, what I've also do is help one of my clients get a fourth property, which is just awesome. So what I want to do now is I've written an essay. Imagine this is an essay. I've written an essay about things I've done. What's important to me about these words? And of course, I've managed to pick a story where it's going to be a lot harder for me to come up with those words. But what I would say to you, I'm cheating because I know the exercise, is that for the Bob and I bit here, this is about wealth. What does this mean to me? This is about a wealthy life. This is about being successful, helping my clients. Then holidays, with Bob again, is about fun. It is also about family. It's also about adventures. It's also about travel, exploring. Down here, when I think about this, the overriding word is finances. Let's call it finances. Then when I think about this, growing tomatoes, this is, for me, it's about climate change. It's about food. What's the lake? It's about health. I would also say, actually, that the food is about health. So the health again. And then what else is the lake? That's also about climate change. This is about friends. We do natter a lot as we swim around the lake. It's about exercise. It's about fitness. So you can see as you start writing, you start to embellish on this and you start to pick out words that mean something to you. So now you've written your essay and you've thought to yourself, when do I have fun? When do I feel successful? When do I feel fulfilled? Whatever words that come up for you. Now what you've got to do is go round this and start circling words that have a meaning. So is swimming important to me, or growing important to me, or cenotes important to me? I better, especially as Bob's in the room, circle Bob is important to me. My friends are important to me. Do you know what? I'm not going to circle exercise because I loathe exercise, but I do like swimming. But fitness, no. Health, yes. Climate change, yes. Yes. Or food, yes. Food. Fun, family, adventure, travel, exploring. Very definitely success, finances, and wealth. So now what I can do is I can start to see that there are words on here that are important to me. I really, really, really want to highlight tomatoes, but I know that won't work in the next exercise. What you do next is you take these words and you create a list out of them. So I've cheated a bit and I've written the words up for you. Hopefully my writing has improved, although I'm not sure. So now what you want to do is you want to start prioritizing these words. And what you might find is that some of the words have a very similar meaning to you. Some of the words will be very different. So for me, Bob is family. So, sorry, I'm now going to cross Bob out because I've got the word family instead. Then if I think about this, is fun the same as adventure? No, it's different. Fun is about laughter. Adventure is like exploring, so I don't need explore anymore. Is adventure travel or fun travel? I think fun and adventure covers travel for me, so I don't need the word travel anymore. I'm not saying that travel is not important to me because, quite frankly, booking my holidays is a top priority. But I like my holidays to be adventures, and so that word covers it for me. Is health and food the same? I don't think you can be healthy unless you've got good food. So if I have just the word health or healthy in my list of values, I know that I'm counting food in there, homegrown food, which brings in around the climate, etc., etc. Now I've got three words here: wealth, success, and finances. What does wealth mean? Wealth for me, and it might mean different things for you, wealth means for me everything in my life, not just the sum of my bank account. So wealth is having the time, the money, the resources, the energy, the health, and everything else to live the life I want. And it's the name of my podcast, A Wealthy Life. So that's a very important one for me. What does success mean for me? Is that the same as finances? Is that the same as any of this? Success is the achieving anything I set my mind to. So that's a very important one for me. Finances. Now, finances need to be in your values somewhere. And I speak to a lot of women that don't include this word in any shape or form. Finances, security, income, none of that, not even wealth, will be in their list of values. And it's a really interesting thing to observe. If you don't have finances somewhere in here as a value, then it's going to be very difficult to make everything else work. But I don't need specifically the word finances because that's encapsulated in wealth and success for me. So now what I'm left with is the word friends and family, which I will group together, fun and adventure, because they come together for me, wealth and success, because they come together for me, and health. And now what I have to do is I have to think to myself, what is most important? And the way that you do that is you ask yourself a question. I would ask you this question. What's more important to you? Your friends and your family, or fun and adventure? Now, there is no right or wrong answer to this, but for me, fun and adventure, family, is more important than friends and family. Because if I just have friends and family and I'm miserable and I'm staying at home, I won't be happy. But if I have fun and adventure, I could maybe meet more people. I might miss my family, but I could make more friends. Okay, that's my rationale. What about health? Oh my gosh. This is so bad. I'm going to do it the way that I did it, and then I'll explain to you how I altered it afterwards. Health. Is my health, in the old days, more important or less important than fun and adventures? Less. Is my health more or less important than friends and families? Less. I'm going to put 3 in there. It's going to go down in a minute. What about wealth and success? More or less important than this? More important. So this now becomes a 1. This moves to a 2. This moves to a 3. This moves to a 4. Now, what else do we have in here? Okay, I've ticked all my words off. They're now in an order, and I've got wealth and success. Number 2 is fun and adventure with friends and family. And health is at the bottom. Now, that was my original values statement. I want to have a wealthy and successful life that enables me to have fun and adventure with family and friends while maintaining a healthy life. That didn't work out so well because without good health, it's very difficult to have the fun and adventure that you want. So I needed to move this up a level. And what I did was I moved it up to my second priority. So I cheated and I went wealth and success in a healthy body so that I can have fun and adventure with family and friends. And that worked all right for a while, except what I lacked here was focus. Absolutely not something I value. I am how many things can I do at the same time? I'm multitasking all the time, hugely creative, completely unfocused. I had to add a word in that made this work. And I would say that it took me 9 months to realize, because when I got this statement, it was so powerful for me. I was on a mission, but I had so much going on. I wasn't enjoying the process. Yes, I was feeling wealthy and successful. Yes, I was having fun and adventure with friends and family. Oh, I've missed out health again. See how easy it is to do in my healthy body? But what I missed was the focus, because by focusing, I could prioritize my time. So I then had to add the word focus at the front. And now my value statement is simply this. I am focused on wealth and success while enjoying my healthy body that enables me to have fun and adventure with family and friends. So I've now made a sentence out of it based on the values that are actually most important to me, but with an additional value that's going to help me to be successful, focus, and by shifting the priority of one, because I realized that without prioritizing health, Nothing else was possible. Now, if you haven't prioritized finance, that might be the word that we pick up there. We might pick up for you that you are focused on whatever's your number one priority, while ensuring that you pay attention to your finances so that you can have whatever it is that you want, your lifestyle, fun and adventures, or passion and purpose, or creativity and community with whoever it is you want to have it with. Or maybe you want to focus on a secure financial future for yourself, family, and friends while feeling wealthy and successful. The words can come in a different priority. This is what I want you to do when you go to the manual, okay? And you are going to adopt powerful values maybe along the way to help you. And it's going to make such a difference to you when you put those into a statement. That statement supports you. It pulls you forward. It reminds you why you're doing this. And it puts you in a position that when you face challenges, it doesn't matter because you remember why you're doing this, because you are focused on creating wealth and success supported by good health and vitality while enjoying fun and adventure with your friends and family, or your version of that statement. So head over to the workbook and make sure that you complete that exercise. I know this might sound a little woo-woo, but I have been doing this for 15 years. It's both revealing and powerful. It reveals what's missing in your priorities and what could be holding you back. It acts as that magnet, as I said to you, to pull you forward and help you take action. But above all, whether you have the word focus or not, it provides you with a focus and a purpose for what you're going to do next, the next step. Focusing on long-term wealth building is exactly how successful investors think. And they think differently about risk, time, and money. And you can develop that mindset, the mindset to be focused and empowered so you can make strategic investments. But before you can start investing, you need to move forward from a media-led, unconscious consumerism to conscious investments in your long-term future. This is a simple one question that you ask before every purchase. And the question is, do I want this more than I want a wealthy life of my choosing? Now, let's be honest, there are times when that morning coffee might be more important to you than your partner, your children, even the dog. This exercise is a silent question in your head to make sure that it's you that's really making the decision about spending your money and not some clever marketing agency. Now, if you're currently working for a marketing agency, you're brilliant at what you do, which is to part people from their money in return for some short-term dopamine hit. Oops, that's 5 people that have just switched off. Okay, so how many times have you spent money, but A, regretted it, B, not enjoyed it and it wasn't worth the money that you spent, or C, got it and then found that it was cheaper elsewhere? Once you start consciously spending, then you'll see a shift in your mindset from shoes and watches, maybe that was me, to impulse purchase, also me, and subpar takeaways, and growing your pot so that you can spin that into investments. Therefore, mastering the power of conscious spending and then adding in the power of leverage will be making your resources work harder so you don't have to. I'm going to explain more about how leverage works a bit later. But simply put, instead of buying a property outright, you borrow money at a rate less than you will earn it back in your investment. The bank very kindly, for a fee, lends you 75% of every property purchase. And then you only have to invest 25% of your own cash as a deposit, plus, of course, the buying costs. Now, property is the only investment class to facilitate this, and we'll talk more about that later. Let me just tell you about Ross for a minute. When I first met Ross at a property networking event, he worked in corporate life. And the first thing he said to me is, I want to quit my job. And in a sense, this is how this has all come around. Where we are now, after a couple of years of working with Ross, is he has a property portfolio that has given him sufficient cash that he has been able to step away from his full-time job. He has now got his property portfolio providing a foundation level of income. He's gone on then to leave the corporate life and has bought himself into a Subway franchise. He's now land leasing. He's got containers that he's renting out. He's absolutely going for it. And this is a really interesting point. When you work in corporate, you can't just stop. You can't just retire because you've had a high level job. You've had that use of your brain, that stress, that pressure. But now everything that you do is your decision for your future, for you and your family. It all started for Ross because he invested in property. He did that alongside his corporate job. And now he's in a position where he's his own boss, sets his own schedule, probably works almost as hard as he used to, but he's only young anyway. Now he has time to be with his family. Let's look at the young whippersnappers. I've got two brothers that I work with that are influencers based out in the States, and they're planning for their future with property. They know there is only so long that the current career that they're in as influencers and boxers is only going to last so long. So they are scooping up all the money that they are making and ploughing it into property with my help so that they will have that level of income coming in so they can make choices. Who knows what choices they're going to make down the line, but they're going to have a level of income that is going to provide them with some long-term financial security from which they can make choices that they wouldn't have had if they'd only had a career that came to an end. We need to start thinking like this, especially with the advance of AI, and I'll talk more about that later. Discover the investment approach that lets you grow your wealth without growing your stress. Let's start comparing the different investment techniques. Now, I have to make this completely clear. This is not financial advice. It's simply designed to get you thinking and asking better questions of yourself and of others. Now, what are your options? It could be property, it could be stocks, bonds, crypto. I'm taking trading off the table because that takes a bit too much time while you're still holding down your job. And like all things, that's going to require a course before you start taking action. And again, everything should be approached from a position of education and information. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand all you need to know about property investment to start making those informed decisions. Now, my first concern for everything is risk. All investments may go up or down, and we know that, particularly with stocks and shares, crypto and bonds. They're all prey to the whims and mood of the market. And yes, property too, to some extent. But we need to factor in supply and demand as well as the volatility in the market. And this is where property wins. Because there is a supply shortage, and we know supply shortages increase the prices. We live on an island. There is a shortage of land. Combine that with the shortage of properties, and hey presto, you are guaranteed price upward trend, even if the magic fairies in government somehow grant wishes and build many, many more houses, the 200,000 that we need on an annual basis. It's never going to be enough. You need a tangible asset with predictable monthly income to replace your salary, and that's property. So why gamble with long-term capital growth, unleveraged investments, taking up your time and your money for some distant future gain? Now, that's okay if you don't want to escape the 9 to 5. That's okay if you've got some family pot of money and you don't need to worry. Or you've got to build a second income, and that comes in the form of property. Compared to other investments like stock, crypto, even pensions, property generates a predictable cash flow on a monthly basis while appreciating in value and using bank leverage to spread your money and time leverage for you, the time-poor investor, by using letting agents and builders. Maybe you wonder why cash flow matters more than capital growth. And that's because you need sanity over vanity. If you start small, you can have both, but you have to prioritize. If you don't have the cash flow, you might own the house, but you'll be paying for the mortgage. I've said we live on an island, we have a housing shortage, rent increases, property value increases, all over time. It's just something that you are going to have to be patient. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. All the time, you are growing your second income with very little of your time. And of course, you can always re-leverage those rental profits back into shares or crypto later on if you want to. The key thing here is about having control and flexibility. Unlike the other investment vehicles, property allows you to have control over your investment and the portfolio size. You're making the decisions, not some portfolio manager who frankly doesn't care about you. You will have systems and strong management in place to mitigate the risks and the toll on your time. But if you rely on stocks and crypto alone, I believe your financial future may be more unpredictable because of the mood of the market and not knowing what position the market will be in when you need that money. Building a portfolio of cash flowing property is safer, controllable, and a time-efficient way to grow your wealth. Let me give you another couple of examples of corporate levers that are achieving the freedom they want via property. One of my clients, Mark, for example, only needed 3 properties to finally move from the banking sector to being the sommelier that he's always wanted. Friends of mine, Chris and Mary, took just 3 years to move from nursing and a maritime career into property developers. Clients of mine at the moment, a young married couple, are planning their journey to leave the army in the next 5 years. And another one of my clients based out in Hong Kong has already secured 3 cash flowing properties in the last 12 months to support his transition back to the UK. The emphasis here is that property offers control, cash flow, predictability, and works well while you're still in a corporate job and are time poor. The longer you wait, the longer your freedom is delayed. Start building your cash flow today. I want to emphasize the need for urgency. You understand the economy now and the myths that we've all been laboring under. I want to discuss the process of compounding your wealth over time, because the longer you wait, the less time you will have for your property investments to grow and compound, and therefore the earlier you start, the greater the opportunity for your wealth to grow. With so much negative property news in the press, you might consider waiting for the perfect deal or attempting to time the market, and that can cost you. Another question I'm often asked by other people that want to invest in property is, why buy to let? When there's money to be made in flipping properties, yes, you can flip, but that's back to timing the market and using your time to manage the buying process, the renovation and the selling and all the costs associated with sales. It doesn't make sense if you're trying to focus on leaving your 9 to 5. The biggest issue for me is that you need to invest a lot of money to make enough profit to be worth the risk and all that time that you're going to spend buying something, selling it, and then not having the cash flow. Therefore, before you start your buy-to-let strategy, which is really creating that second income for you, it's perfect for you if you're full-time working and looking for something that is more hands-off, never completely hands-off because you need to be in charge. You can always do the more exciting deals when you have more time, post that 9 to 5 exit. Plus, of course, you'll have the experience and the financial investors will prefer you, so you'll get cheaper money. This is all about building a sustainable plan. Property investing requires patience, strategic planning, and commitment, but it pays off over time. By taking calculated action now, it beats indecision every time. When I work with my clients, I'm creating a bespoke approach, factoring in their resources, their attitude towards risk, and the money that they have available. Because property needs to fit you and your goals and your needs. And that's why a clear, personalized strategic plan is the key to success. To the young guns out there, whether you're a basic rate taxpayer living at home or you're a high-flying tech and social media star, you can start now and make a difference from whatever your starting point is, creating that property portfolio that maybe you can afford when you can't afford to buy your first residential home. And this will give you the power to be in control of your future, something you need, because the robots are coming and you really need to be prepared. So what about if you work in corporate and want to retire early? Or maybe you own your own business and just need some sort of exit strategy. You need a plan. Whether you've sold your business or you're still working, there is always a way that you can start now. But everyone is different. You're starting from a different position and you have a different goal. Everyone's financial security is vital to them, now more than ever. But if you wait for the perfect deal, your wealth may never compound as it should. So, taking an informed strategic action right now, even the small steps, creates momentum that grows over time. Because when that change comes, those robots again, we will still need homes. And even if my very good letting agent reduces her staff team because of all the AI help she's getting, I will still get my rent from my tenants. We will still be living on that island with a housing shortage. And until the world turns into a sci-fi movie, a la Bruce Willis, where we're all living in the sky, none of that is going to change. You need a financial plan now. So you don't need to become a full-time investor to replace your salary. It's about making good choices, to work smarter, not harder, and to turn theory into action. Now let's assume, and we know that's dangerous, that you've made a decision that you want to generate a second source of income, rental income from property without quitting your job immediately. Now, that makes me happy, because staying employed will make it so much more easy for you to become mortgageable, unless, of course, you've got a credit history issue. Now you have a choice. You can do it yourself. You will learn everything you need to get started from this course: how to analyse deals, how to understand locations, manage tenants. But let's be honest, going it alone can be both risky and stressful. And that's where mentoring comes in. I've been in property for 20 plus years now, featured in the Telegraph as one of the 25 most influential people in property. I've got 5 best-selling books. I'm a speaker, an investor, a mentor. Yes, I love my tomatoes, and I love cold water swimming too. If you combine all of that with my 11 years experience as a university lecturer, I'm immensely qualified to both teach you how to invest in property in theory, structuring it so that you can learn how, but I've also got the real world, ongoing and historical experience to make it relevant for you. Now, I can do it for you, working with you to create that overarching strategy, identifying the investment techniques that will make the best use of your money in terms of property type, tenant type, and of course, location. All the while, you'll be leveraging my time, my knowledge, and my team to create a systemized second income to support your goals while you continue doing what maybe you love, work, maybe you don't love. Once you understand the way I work, I think you'll realize that no one else is qualified to offer this level of support for busy corporates that are looking to start that transition process and escape the 9-to-5. Outsourcing the process to someone like me means that you can build a property portfolio without sacrificing your time, which after all is your most precious resource. I'll explain how to contact me if you want to at the end of the video, and of course it's in the show notes. Now you might be wondering, one last thought, could I manage this myself with just mentoring support, or should I let Vicki do it for me? Well, we'll cover all of that. But first, you need to know what's involved before you can make that decision. So let's jump in and talk property. Here's what we're going to cover in the next section: the pre-purchase priorities, practical tips that are going to help you become investment ready, finding and analysing deals. That includes how to use the Excel Deal Analyser as one of your tools, along with Rightmove. And then the buying process, the step-by-step guidance to completing your first purchase. By the end of this section, you'll have all the information that you need to get started, just like I did when I began my property journey 20 years ago. Let's jump ahead and make a few assumptions and talk property properly now. Specifically, how to build a second income without quitting your job. You know now why relying on your employer won't secure your future, and what mindset and investment choices you will need to create the financial freedom you want. Now it's time for the how, the practical steps that will start generating passive income while keeping your job going so that you can start making those all-important choices. And here's the good news: you don't have to quit your job tomorrow to start building a cash-flowing property portfolio. In fact, staying employed is actually a good idea because it helps you with that steady salary to improve your mortgage eligibility. And it makes sure that this is a low risk investment for you. Let's start with some of the pre-purchase priorities. These are the practical steps that will help you to become lender ready and make the process smooth, fast, and stress-free. Number 1, you need to know yourself and your money. This is where we'll head back to the workbook that accompanies this course, and we'll start by building on the self-awareness you've already explored through the values manual. Now we're going to talk money, and your spending habits. The action steps that I want you to take here are to track your income and expenses for a month. You can use an app, but even better, use an Excel spreadsheet, and there is a link for you in the workbook. I want you to resist outsourcing this. This is your lesson to learn. In the workbook, this Excel spreadsheet is called the Wealth Tracker. When you go into it, I have created a whole template for you to complete. There is a second document called the Assets and Liabilities Sheet, and that helps you to start consciously counting and accounting for your resources. The insights that you gain from tracking your expenses will be transformative. Some of my clients have been shocked. Others get confirmation that they're on the right path. I want you to commit 2 hours this weekend or maybe one of the evenings in the coming week to gather the whole of last month's bank statements and credit card activity statements. I suggest that you upload them to a Dropbox or Google Drive because you're going to need some of those documents later on. You're then going to take those documents and edit them into your spreadsheet, breaking down what you've been spending your money on. And trust me, it is worth it. Now, why does this matter? Because I've already talked to you about conscious and unconscious spending. Consciously managing your personal finances trains you to actually manage the property business you are about to create. A second benefit from this is that the exercise will help you identify where you need help. Maybe spreadsheets aren't your thing. I love a spreadsheet. And maybe you don't like doing things in that level of detail. It's important to know that now. And finally, if that's not enough reason, then the broker is going to ask you some questions about your personal finances, and now you're going to know the answers. So number 2, I want you to start preparing your paperwork. These are the personal documents, a list of paperwork and hoops that you actually have to go through before the broker can even start applying for a mortgage. Think of this as phase 1 of getting investor ready. The personal documents you need to prepare are these. Proof of your ID, so your passport or your driving license. There are going to be brokers that will do this digitally, but you still need to access those, and I would recommend having a copy of that in your Dropbox folder. You're going to need proof of address. I would suggest that this is a recent bank statement because then we can use that for many reasons, and it will just be one document that will serve a couple of purposes. You have to bear in mind only certain documents actually count as proof of address, and the bank statement is the easiest one. If you store all the documents I talked to you about in a dedicated folder on Dropbox or Google Drive, you're going to not only have the answers to the questions that you need, but you're also going to be in a position where you can easily access those documents when the broker asks for them. I've always encouraged my clients to have a folder prepared ready because it just saves time and it keeps everything organized. Number 3, let's start preparing the paperwork in terms of your money and your income. Lenders are going to want to know how much you earn, where your investment cash is coming from. Thanks to historical robberies like the Brinksmack gold heist back in 1983, property investment comes with a lot of paperwork because it's all about preventing money laundering. But this is manageable. The documents to compile are the following: 6 months bank statements, both of the account where your salary comes in and any account in which you hold savings. You're then going to need 6 months payslips. And if you're investing with a partner, they're going to need to do the same. If you already have some property portfolio, you're going to need to have a portfolio summary. This is your existing properties, their addresses, their values, their descriptions, mortgage details, and rent details. Now, this information may already be on your assets and liabilities form. Brilliant. You've already got that information that you can transfer onto the broker's paperwork, and even some lenders use different forms. This is all about saving you time and being prepared. Now, I think that was fairly painless. You've got your folder already set up. Your broker is going to be able to have everything that they need for that initial mortgage application. And moving forward, you're only going to have to update your monthly payslips, update your monthly bank statements. And of course, as you buy property, you'll update your portfolio sheet. The ID that the broker uses from your folder is then going to be used for the solicitor and again for the accountant. So this piece of upfront admin is used time and time again. And at this point, if you're actively looking, I would also contact a broker, run through your ID and your finances just to check that you have everything ready. There are some lenders out there that can produce something called a decision in principle, a DIP, or sometimes an agreement in principle, AIP. And this means that with the broker's help, the lender will assess whether they would lend money to you as the human being or you, the company. And then they only need to carry out the survey on the property that you find in order to make that offer. It speeds up the process, but also estate agents are impressed when they receive a copy of a decision in principle and proof of funds, proof that you've got the money to actually buy this property up front. They know that you're serious and you're professional. Now, when you have a deal, moving fast is absolutely crucial. Let me just jump ahead here to when you actually have the deal. The goal is to move fast because once your offer is accepted, we need to demonstrate speed to both the vendor and their estate agent. This shows that you're serious and will ensure that you're not gazumped. Once your offer is accepted, step by step, you're going to go through these stages. You will have spoken to your broker, and that has determined the best lender for you. The lender will have a panel of solicitors they prefer to use. This determines the solicitor you can use. When you have the solicitor's details, that information is all given to the estate agent to enable the estate agent to create something called the MOS, or Memorandum of Sale. This is sort of like the heads of terms about your offer. You're going to buy this house from these people for that price and any conditions that you would put in. That memorandum of sale is then shared between the vendors and your solicitor, and this gives them the information to start speaking to one another. It's only at this point that you go ahead and create your property company and your property bank account. And you only do it once your offer is accepted. Now, I said move fast, and don't worry here, because it is easy to actually create a company and set up your bank account in the time, probably, that your mortgage offer will come through. Solicitors, sorry if you're watching as well, are notoriously slow. They are going to take easily 4 to 8 weeks to get their side of the paperwork done. That gives you enough time to create your company, particularly if you work with my accountants, and set up your company account, company bank account. And the reason that you don't do this before is because the minute that company comes into effect, there are going to be costs and responsibilities associated with it. Annual accounting and the fiduciary duties means that you have to fill in paperwork at Companies House. Don't waste time doing that if you haven't already got your company in place. My team, as I mentioned, includes an experienced property accountant, and they handle this smoothly for it. Your job is simply to think of a company name and then check on Companies House that it's available. Timing here is crucial. Go back over this list and make sure you understand it. I want to summarize this pre-purchase admin process. Number 1, track your income and expenses so you understand your finances. Prepare all of the personal and financial documents in advance because organization equals speed and confidence. Confidence from the estate agent that you know what you're doing. Step 3, don't set up that company too early, but move quickly once you have a deal. Broker, lender, solicitor, company set up, all happening in the right sequence. Investing with a team or a mentor reduces the mistakes and keeps the process efficient. If you follow these steps, you will be fully investor ready, ready to act quickly when the right property comes along, with confidence in your ability to make your first cash-flowing, cash-generating investment a success. Now that you're investment ready and have all of your admin sorted, let's finally talk property. Yes, the part you've been waiting for. I'm going to start as I did at the beginning of the video with your choices. First, you choose property over shares or crypto because you want cash flow. Now you need to understand that the cash flow potential of the different investment options and different investment techniques that you have. And I use the term technique where others might use the word strategy, because these aren't strategies. These are the how you do the investing. Your strategy is to create a cash flowing property portfolio so that you can start the transition from full-time work to escaping the 9 to 5. So what properties should you invest in? And this is where most novices go wrong. They see a city centre flat and they think it's a dream deal without factoring in service charges, maintenance, or the actual cash flow. I spoke to one new client recently who just offered £420,000 for a 2-bed flat in Manchester that would generate just £100 a month after all costs. Ouch. I think the return on investment was less than 1%. Thank goodness we started speaking and working together. What I want you to consider are the different property types and the considerations that go with them. Let's start with flats. A flat has limited potential to enhance the building because you're in a block. There are service charges that actually reduce the cash flow that you will finally end up with. But it is a possible strategy for investors that are more experienced further in their journey. Then let's think about houses. They are unique and adaptable. Even if you're in a row of terraces, you can change the front door. You can add an extension. You have full control over the property, the maintenance and the servicing, because it is a freehold property rather than a leasehold property. You'll get steady cash flow from families, and you can streamline your systems to manage your expenses. Now, you might have heard of HMOs or student houses, actually houses of multiple occupancy. This is a house that is rented out room by room. There is the potential for higher cash flow, but it requires time, marketing and maintenance to have that full occupancy, because that is where the money actually comes through, when they are full, all your rooms. And that makes management much more complicated. But it is a great long-term business model. Once you have the experience and the time, you may choose to do this. What about flips and renovations? So buying a house, doing it up and then selling it. So the goal is buy low, refurbish and then sell high. That's the goal. It's going to be cash heavy to start. It needs a skilled build team, which you might not have to start off with. There are lending restrictions that you need to take into account. But it could be better to take this property that you bought low, do it up and keep the property for the cash flow. Why sell it? You are never going to have that house that cheap again. I bought a property, I won't name it, for one of my clients who lives abroad. We bought the property at £101,000. We spent £35,000 doing it up. So call it £136,000 all in. We got a new valuation at £160,000. Now, I've done this for quite a few clients. There is a strategy out there called BRRR, which is buy, refurb, rent, remortgage. We did not do that strategy here. Yes, we pulled the money out, but that's because they bought with cash. But we didn't max out on the mortgage. We didn't take 75% of the 160 because it would have affected the cash flow. And that's the point. We simply pulled the money back out. That was the deposit and the refurb costs. So it was better for the client. They didn't leave as much money in, but they still got the cash flow coming back out the other end. And they didn't sell it. They've got it as part of their portfolio. Now, this is a great thing to do when you have the cash to actually fund this process. It works really well for people that have got in the region of £200,000 to £250,000. So what about serviced accommodation, Airbnb, sometimes called contractor houses? I'm also going to add in here social housing because it's all the same thing. This is potentially higher cash flow, even after the extensive costs, because all of these require you to furnish the property. They are time intensive. Let's take them one by one. A contractor house. This is basically where you're putting in typically guys that work during the week in one location and go home to their families at the weekend. So you've got a mid-term rental. It requires management. It needs to be kept in full tip-top class condition. You're going to need cleaners and the furnishing, of course. So what if we take out the contractors and we just stick in social housing tenants on a contract? These contracts are quite onerous and demanding. There'll be high maintenance charges, and depending on the tenant type, you could have some risk of additional damage. I'm not saying that refugees and ex-prisoners cause damage, but certainly the cases that I've come across where they've been housing ex-prisoners, there is a lot more maintenance that is required. And just for completeness, I'm going to put in here development. This is 100% full-time attention, cash heavy, and requires experience. It's absolutely not for beginners unless your corporate job in the city is being an architect or a builder. Therefore, family lets are the answer. You buy them, you refurb them, you rent them, you let families enjoy your property. They think it's their home, so there's minimal maintenance, predictable cash flow, and no voids. What's not to like? Okay, so now we know what to buy. Let's talk about where to buy. Because location, along with the tenant type and the systems, is key to your cash flow. In the workbook, I have included an exercise that gets you started exploring the locations, starting from where you live and then moving out until you find an area where the numbers work, the yield equation. Now, you can follow along on the exercise, or you can just cheat and use my experience to search for properties that are between £80,000 to £140,000, with rent increasing from £700 per calendar month to £900 or more. Now, you can copy my spreadsheet that I'm going to demonstrate to you, or you can download the version that I have put for you here. You'll see the link on the screen. I just want to, in this section, talk about a few rules, a few location considerations. So number one, avoid city centres. Why? Because they're highly priced. I would suggest to you that you start local to where you live and then move north, east and west of England, because that's where you're going to find cheaper prices. Nothing against Scotland, but avoid it because it has a different sales process. Ireland, avoid it. Think about the logistics, unless of course you live there. And with Wales, although it's a huge country, there's a relatively low supply because you've got all those mountains in the middle. So it's condensed around the south, the north, the coast. The coast is too far away. The south is too crowded. When I did my first planning session, I focused on motorways and areas that I'd already been familiar with. Brighton, too expensive. Leeds, lovely, too expensive. And then I stumbled on the northwest. Use the Google research, like I did, to lead you to the northwest, the northeast, and the east of England. Now, once you've found your general area and you're using the yield to help you, or that equation that I gave you, you also want to understand where the tenants live in any given town. So I think of any town as a clock. So here we have our town. Obviously, none of them are circles like this. They're all squiggly shapes. What you need to do when you have found your area is to start mapping out the areas. You can use different coloured pens, or maybe you get a paper map and you pin it to the wall, or you can use Google Maps. But let's say, for example, in this section here, we have the high value houses. So this is where the families live. This is where the owner-occupiers are. So this is owner-occupiers. Whole range of houses there, starting in the centre as less expensive, moving out to the edge, more expensive. Now let's look at, and I'm just going to do it in quadrants. It doesn't really work out like that. It's a little bit more complicated. Actually, let's cheat. Let's do it this way round. Round here, let's look at these as being the rental properties. So this is where you have got people who aspire to live in this quadrant, but can't afford the area, can't afford the prices. So they live as close as they can, and they are living in the rental accommodation section. And this might be in 2 or 3 different blocks. What we've got over here is industry, because this is where the people live and work. So they work here, they live close to work. This could be one of those supermarket complexes like Whiteley's, where you've got a collection of shops. Or this could actually be a bit more industrial. It could be where the vans come in and the lorries and the deliveries, and there's lots of those warehousing areas going up. The other thing that we've got is the actual city centre itself. Obviously, I've ended up sticking my city centre down in the corner. But you've got a city centre, and in here you've got your non-industrial businesses. So this is finance and banking. This is shops. This is anything that's sort of administrative, marketing, etc. Again, there are still people that want to be able to reach this for work. And then maybe what you've got over here are a couple of other sections. One is school. So where are the schools, or potentially the university, if your city, town has one. You've also got here the hospitals. So anything medical. It could also be where the fire brigade are. You might have an ambulance centre, something like that. Now what you've done on your city or town that you're mapping out is got a sense of where everything is. And what you're going to do is you're going to narrow down searching for properties. You very definitely are not going to be looking in the high value area because the numbers simply won't work. You're going to focus on this area here where the rental properties are. But you're probably going to avoid the ones that are too close to the industrial area. So, for example, not on this sort of border here. Because while these properties might be cheaper, think about your tenant type. They want to live somewhere like this, but they can't afford to. So they really don't want to live on the line right next to where all the big lorries are coming, right to where there's the noise, the smoke, the pollution. And they will potentially want to live close to the schools, and they might even be working in the hospitals or the support services. They might be working in the city, in the shops, in the administration, in restaurants, in entertainment, even in the finance sectors. So this area here then becomes your target. Can you see that? This becomes your target area. That's when you start zooming in. You start looking at the postcodes and you get into more detail. And we'll cover that shortly. Now, Rightmove or other online estate agents are available, will be your friend for this. Once you've got your understanding of your area, you're going to zone in on the postcodes. You can start adding those postcodes into your documents so that you can start working your way through and filling up the spreadsheets. You will then get to know these areas. So what is the price in this piece here between the high value properties and the industrial, but not too close? What is the value of the properties that are close to the schools, close to the hospital, or close to the city? You need to consider your tenants, the desirability of the service product that you're offering. You know who your tenants are. Families. You know that families want safe, decent areas. What I'd suggest to you is the teenage daughter test. Would you let your 18-year-old daughter walk home at night if you lived in this zone here? Quite frankly, even if you lived particularly close to the city. If yes, keep researching. If no, move postcode areas. It's that simple. Now we're going to get to the exciting part, calculating whether property is a good deal or not. If you love a spreadsheet, this will be your happy place. If not, it could be a nightmare, but you'll be fine. Let's put all of this together and run through the whole process. I'm going to use my template and run a couple of deals through the sheet and talk you through my thinking as I do it. You can pause the video here and copy my example, or you can have a copy of my Deal Analyser. You just need to follow this link and see it also in the show notes. Okay, so here we are with the Deal Analysis spreadsheet. And what I want to do first of all is give you a blank copy so I can just talk you through the layout that I've got down the side and the reasoning for it. So I always include in here the link on Rightmove. And the reason that I do that is because I want to be able to refer back to where I got this information from. And then if I'm going to make this spreadsheet useful, I want to get into the specifics. What is the estate agent and which branch? Because sometimes they have many branches in the area and you want to know which branch you were talking to. You can find that off of the Rightmove information. So here's an insider trick for you, the telephone number. Never take the number or call the number that you see on Rightmove. It's better if you take the estate agency address and put that into Google and find the direct number that way round. They know or will perceive you as a novice if you just click on that button. Plus, of course, you're making them incur charges at a premium rate number. The next line is obviously put in the person that you've been speaking to because it's really useful to build up those relationships. Now, this is some data that I want you to collect. The date the property came to market, and you can see that, particularly if you use Rightmove, it's quite easy. You've got the picture of the house, then you've got the house price, that what they're asking for, and under that is where you will usually find the date that it came to market. Now, sometimes it will say date reduced. Or you might see it come to market and then in a week or two, it's still on the market and notice that it's reduced. You want to keep going back to these. Make sure that you comment on those here. The date it came to market, if you can see it, and the date that it was reduced if you notice it reduce. Energy performance ratings, EPC. So this is the bane of our lives. It's really important that you pay attention to this. There is legislation coming into effect that will limit the number of properties that can be rented out to tenants if they don't have good EPC ratings. It's okay to buy something with a D rating because that's quite easy to bring it up to C, but you will often find that there are better mortgage products at a C rating. Description speaks for itself. It's a 3-bed house or it's a flat. I don't really like flats. Whatever else it is, you write it in there. So sometimes I call it the red bedroom, or I might call it the yellow door, or there'll be something that sticks out for me like the stinky house, the damp house, the house with the tree in it, the house with the bad roof. So some sort of memory jogger for you so that you can go, oh yeah, I know which one it is, without having to go back and click on links. And then the next thing you want to put in here is your full property address. So again, this is something that you can work out even before you go and view the property. When you're just doing your research, you can spot the house numbers. Always looking at bins is a good idea. People love writing their house numbers on a bin. Or when you get round to the stage where you're ringing the estate agent, you can ask them for the full address. This is important for your later due diligence. Then there are 2 prices here. There's the Rightmove asking price, and then there's your buying price. So you enter these grey squares. So the grey squares are going to be where you will put your data in. You put in the price that's on Rightmove, and I then immediately copy that into the buy price, because what I want to do is see what happens to my figures later down the line if I am paying the asking price. I never want to pay the asking price, but that's the top line number that I work with. This number of bedrooms you stick in there. So the next line is the mortgage. There's a formula in here for you, and it's calculated on a 75% loan to value. So you don't need to alter that. It's already in there for you. Rental income, you're going to have to do a little bit of work for yourself. I would always underestimate the rental income. And then when you come to rent the property, if you get a higher rate, that's even better, because that simply means more cash flow for you. So always be conservative on the rental income figure that you put in here in the grey box. Letting agent has been calculated for you at a standard 10% plus VAT. The mortgage has been calculated for you. Depending on when you're doing this and your conversation with the broker, you will need to change this pinky purple number. At the moment, I put in 5.2. That's slightly above average. But again, I like to increase the cost of the mortgage payments and enter the cost of the rent, because that changes the figures to being the worst possible. This green row will calculate for you, and this is the net cash flow. This is an important figure, and we're going to come back to it. So in the next section, we've got figures that are automatically calculated for you. You don't need to worry about it. One of it is the deposit, which will be at 25%, particularly if you've got a 75% loan to value mortgage. The purchasing costs, which is in this row here, is repeated from a section lower down. So is the refurbishment cost. That's a number pulled back up. And the cash left in is a calculation for you. And then this number here, again, return on investment, or we were talking about cash on cash. This is a figure that is calculated, an important number, and we will come back to that as well. Now we're into the notes section. So this is where we're starting to look at the costs that come to do with buying the property. So you're going to have solicitor costs. Now this is in a limited company because that is the better way to buy. I've said that I'm not a financial advisor. I haven't fully covered off this, but as high rate taxpayers, you will be buying in limited companies. And I hinted at that because I simply told you what you needed to do was to set up a company. But the reason for that is that you are a higher rate taxpayer and it's a better idea. So these are the sort of costs that you could be expecting, but you will get a quote. One other thing that you need to do when you're buying in a limited company is get independent legal advice. And typically you should be looking to pay no more than £300 for that. So again, that's included here in the solicitor costs. The survey, I'm using the term survey, but really that's a lender's valuation. Sometimes you get this for free. Sometimes they charge you for it. You have a choice. And as a residential buyer, what you would automatically do is pick a level 2 survey. This is where the surveyor gives you a more full report on the property. If I was going to do this as an investor, with 20 years experience, I pretty much know what the problems are in a house, and I know that they're fixable anyway. If ever there was something that was of concern, something structural, I might get an expert in. But for the most time, I just get the simple valuation. If you're starting out, you might want to get in either a private surveyor or actually have a level 2 survey through the lender. Your broker figure will change. That depends on how much your broker is going to charge you. That's broadly a good number. We pay $499 for one, and for my clients that are based abroad, I pay $895. So somewhere in that figure. I've then put in £265. These figures will automatically populate, and that really covers an electrical certificate and a gas certificate. The property will be marketed with an energy performance certificate, which is how you need to know what the EPC rating is. But somewhere in a 12-month period, you will definitely need a new gas certificate. Where I invest, I'm looking at £65 for one of those. Within a 5-year period, you will need a new energy performance certificate, and that's typically £195. So I just rounded those numbers up and stuck them in there. Now, I don't tend to add in a figure for an annual maintenance budget. And the reason I don't do this is because you are deducting money from your calculations at this point that aren't true, because you haven't done the refurb, you haven't got it tenanted, and we're then not comparing like for like. So I tend to leave that one empty for now. But when I come back round and I use a streamlined version of this as a record of the figures for a specific property that I have actually bought, then I do fill that in afterwards. Insurance, you'll need to get a quote on this, but it depends where you are in the country. You want to be looking at £300 to £400 as a budget in there. And then obviously I've got an insurance team that I work with, so I know their numbers. Get a quote on this. Again, not something that I would get a quote on until I'd got my offer accepted, because otherwise you're wasting the insurer's time. So putting in, say, £300-400 here would be a good budget figure. Stamp duty. As an investor, you are charged additional stamp duty because you are now a second homeowner, even though it's in a limited company. You'll need to do the calculations based on the purchase prices. The first 40,000 you pay nothing. From 40,000 to 125, as an investor, you will pay 5%, and over that, you are looking to pay 8%. And that's why we're trying to keep our purchase prices below the 125, because it is a much cheaper set of stamp duty costs for you. That extra 3%, if you just go over the 125, really hurts. Now, another thing that you need to factor in here is that if you are doing a refurbishment on a property that is empty, you want to factor in a void period, a period where you're going to pay the mortgage. You also have tenant find costs that you pay to the letting agent. So you want to put in a good 4 times the cost of the mortgage as a broad budget that you will stick in there. Sometimes I work with specific companies where I get properties given direct to me off market, and I pay a fee for that. So that would be this column here, column 41. When you get to that stage where maybe you are paying for properties to be kept off market and coming to you directly, not something I typically do, so be very careful of that. And of course, here I've stuck in my own portfolio fee. So if you work with me, this is the price that you would be paying per property in the early years. Down here, the annual return on investment over 3 and 5 years, they automatically calculate for you. And then this is the last piece I want to show you. I've got a budget in here, a very broad budget, almost a bit, finger in the air, but it gives you an idea of potential costs. Depends where in the country you're looking. And I always allow this sort of £10,000 initial budget until I've seen the property and until I can prove these things aren't needed. I will always allocate £1,000 to outside. The number of fences that are blown down, have holes in, properties aren't protected, the front of the building, you might have a fence that's a bit broken, or the gate doesn't work. £1,000 is a good budget to have in there. You want to spend a lot less than that, obviously, but put the £1,000 in. Now we move down to roof, chimney and gutter repairs. It will be completely obvious to you if you need a new roof. You'll see the slip tiles, or you may notice when you're upstairs whopping great damp patches on the roof. If you do, you're looking at a good, depends where you are in the country, £10,000 to £15,000. But I always put in £1,000 per property to get the gutters cleared. And if you watch any of my Instagram posts, you'll see that I love viewing houses in the rain. Rain is the greatest way to check the gutters out. You can see where the leaks are. The leaks not only are causing damage to the front of the building, but can be splashing back, and you'll find damp patches in the house. And they can be easily rectified by simply fixing the gutters. So some of it is about cleaning the gutters, and you'll find all sorts of vegetation, sometimes even small buddleia trees in there, often just grass. And then, of course, you've got the leaks so that you can fix all the joints. So £1,000 budget is more than enough to cover the front and the back of a property. Again, a nice round number to allow for contingencies. I don't typically put in figures for the redeck, the flooring, the kitchen, or the bathroom until I've viewed the property, unless it's something very obvious when you're viewing the pictures on Rightmove. So it might be that you're very aware that you're going to be buying a property that has had tenants in it and it's a mess, or that you've had an older person living in there who's maybe gone into care. So it's a probate property or somebody moving out into care. And then you can put those allocations in. I've given you examples here of £5,000 and £6,000 as budgets that you can move over. I don't tend to put them in straight away until I'm making that decision about what's needed. Frankly, sometimes we have properties where we are buying them already tenanted because of the relationships that I have. I will buy direct from landlords. But all of the numbers that are in there, that initial £10,000 budget still stands. But I wouldn't be routinely redecorating and replacing floors and kitchens and bathrooms if I was buying it with a tenant in situ, because they probably don't need it. Now, I have put the £5,000 down here as a contingency because the problem that we have with bathrooms is the lights aren't legal requirements or don't meet legal standards, and they very often don't have appropriate fans in there to deal with the condensation. So your light in the bathroom needs to be one that you cannot get the bulb out easily. The other thing with the fan is you want to make sure that it is a good fan, a solid fan. You want it to come on when the light comes on. And best of all, you want to have a fan that is able to detect the humidity and just comes on and off all of its own accord to keep the humidity down in bathrooms. They are the hugest, greatest source of black mold because of the damp in the air coming out of that bathroom, moving around the building and hitting cold walls. Then there are three here, which again are figures that I like to put in that are really about almost servicing and maintaining the property before you even get to the point where we're putting a tenant in place. So window surfacing. Most of the time you're going to find properties have got double glazing. Although yesterday when we were out, we actually found a property with wooden style double glazing. It's been a long time since I've seen a property without UPVC double glazing. What you find with double glazing is that the hinges go, the handles go, you lose the keys, or you can even get to the stage where the units are blown. And what that means is that when you look at a double glazing piece of glass, a window, you'll see condensation between the two pieces of glass. That means the seals have broken and it's not being effective. These are easy things to repair. They're going to enhance your EPC rating, and they're also going to save the tenant money. If we've got effective double glazing, then the tenants are going to save money on the electricity and heating costs, which is important. So I put £1,000 in just as a routine number for window servicing. Electrics and plumbing. I mentioned to you that you're going to have an electrical certificate. It might mean that when you have the certificate renewed, there's works there. It might mean that you need to add new sockets. So you've got a bit of a budget put in there. And the same with the plumbing. Now, what I would do with the plumbing is I would get a new gas certificate to cover the boiler. I would ask them to service the boiler and to do something called a flush. And this is where they are running water through the system, where they're cleaning out all of the old oxidated water so that you've got like a whole fresh rust-free system working. And it increases the life of a boiler, and it's a significant cost, talking about £2,000-3,000 for a boiler. So you really want to take care of it like you would your car. You would service it, you would get the oil changed. That's effectively what you're doing here. It's not going to cost you £1,000, but again, it's a nice round number. And then I always stick in some extras at this point. I haven't got a clue what the extras are going to be, but I like to stick in another £2,500 because why not? And then I always add a contingency on the top of that. So I'm adding, in effect, almost £4,000 to this refurbishment budget just in case. Now, what that does is it reflects back up here to this line here, the refurbishment costs, it then has an impact on how much money you need to have in your hand to invest in this property. But by overestimating and putting all of those budgets in, I know that if I've got enough money to buy it based on these figures, and actually I don't have to do all of that work, then I'm in pocket. And I'd rather have it that way round. Now let's go over and actually look at one that I have populated with some numbers for you. So I just wanted to go through that so you knew what I was talking about when we look at the examples. So here we are. I've put in, and let's just consider these first three first of all. So ignore this one. I know you might be tempted. So what we've got here is a property that I happen to know that is a probate property. When we scroll down the bottom, there's the £14,000 in there because we know for a fact that it needs a new roof. The tiles were slipped. It was in a proper mess. Sometimes with roofs, you can do some work to them to elongate their lives. If it's just a slip tile, you can put the tile back. But this roof was in need of replacement. The other thing that I would say to you about roofs is don't let the moss build up. So this was a proper mess. We needed a full new kitchen. We needed a full redeck. We needed a full new bathroom. It was a wet room. It had been used by somebody elderly. So all of this work needed doing. There was definitely windows that were blown. And you can see now that you're looking at a budget in the region of 40,000. The reason I put this in as an example, they put it on the market for £120,000. I know that I'm going to have to spend some £40,000 to bring it up to rentable standard. That's without stamp duty and legal costs and everything else. Is that house that I pay £120,000 for and then I spend £40,000 to do it up actually worth £160,000? Well, the way to work that out is something called due diligence. You do Rightmove, you do net house prices, and you start looking at recent sold properties that are on the market. If you want to, you go all the way to land registry and you look at that. What you're doing is looking for comparables. Are there houses that are selling significantly more than 160? Because I don't want to pay £120,000, put £40,000 worth of work in it, and the time that takes, because that time means that I'm paying the mortgage, I'm not getting rent in, and then just create a property that's worth 160 when I could buy one down the road that is also for 160 and I could move a tenant straight in. Remember I said to you this idea of you look at yields, you get the bigger picture. When you start to compare things using return on investment or cash on cash, you can start to get into the nitty gritty of understanding why this house is a good deal and that house isn't. This house is not a good deal. It's going to take £95,000 worth of cash. At the end of it, you are going to create a property. Yes, it's going to have a new roof, and the one you're comparing it to might not have a new roof or a brand new kitchen, but really you're going to be creating something that's worth 160 in an area that the top price is 160. I wouldn't want to do that. As an example, we did one property, and I'm sure I've already mentioned this to you, where we bought a probate for 101,000. We spent the 40 on it, but we got a valuation of 160. So now you can see I've created something at 140, but got the valuation at 160. That's okay. I'm happy with that as a deal. Let's jump over to this row or this column here, column F. And now what I'm going to be doing is looking at another house as an example. This is on for considerably more. It's in the same area, but it's a landlord selling rather than a probate sale. So you can see why everybody would be interested in the property that's 120,000 because it is a much lower sale price than we normally find. The regular asking price is around 145. So that's what the landlord's asked. But it's also been on the market for months and months and months because he's got tenants in it. So he's immediately wiped out the residential market. He's looking for another investor to buy from him, which is great, which is what I want to do. I'm happy to buy with his tenants in situ, providing they meet our criteria. But he's narrowed his market to only investors, and then he's shrunk his market even more by asking an inflated market price rather than an investor price. Now, what I want to do with this one, yes, we can scroll down again and you'll see there's the budget in. We need to do the fence outside. The rear fence isn't in a good condition, but I'm not bothering to look at redecoration or new carpets, anything like that. The family's lived there for 3.5 years. They're happy with the property. I asked if there were any repairs that need doing, and there aren't, but I'm leaving my budget in there. And what we've got now is all of these figures have populated. You can see how the stamp duty has been increased. And when you come up here, you can see that it's going to take £70,000 of our money to buy this property, covering off the cash required for the deposit, the purchasing costs, which are your solicitors, survey, stamp duty, etc., and the refurb budget from below. All of those figures add up to £70,000, roughly speaking. Now look what's happened to our return on investment. It's 3%. And this is why I wanted to pick these up for you. On the first place, the probate property, you're looking at a 5% return. That's too low for me. Remember, I used the example of if interest rates are at 4%, then I want to be seeing a better rate of return for my money. I'm taking a risk. We said that investments are risks. I want to see a better rate of return than just 1% extra than I can have leaving it in a savings account. 3% is less than I could get in the savings account. So that's crazy. Now, why? There are two reasons here. Now, if you look at this row here, row 19, you can see that the market rent would be £9.25. The tenants in this property are paying £7.50. You can see that the purchase price is considerably higher. And this is where you can start to play with the numbers. And what you're doing at this point is going, well, what would I have to pay for it to be worth me buying it? What would the refurb budget have to be to make it worth me buying it? What is the rent going to have to be to make it worth me buying it? So we already know that we've got a £10,000 extra in there, really speaking, on the budget for the refurb. Even if we said the fencing cost £2,000, I've over budgeted by £8,000. I would still keep that in there. The first thing you're going to look at is the sale price. I don't want to pay 145. I do want this property, but I'm not going to pay that. What happens if I go down to 140? And I start it gradually to look at the impact. Now, remember that what we've got here is 188 cash flow and 3% is your return on investment. When I change this, my cash flow goes up and therefore my return on investment goes up. It's still not enough. Okay, so I think they would take a £5,000 reduction. I don't think, given how long it's been on the market, that he would take a 10,000 reduction. But if I did, I'm still not really changing my return on investment much. I have brought down the amount of money I need to put in by a little. I've increased my cash flow by a little, but now I'm probably not going to get the deal. So thinking wise, I put that back to 140. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to go in with an offer of 130 and they're going to say no, and then we're going to talk about it. You always do that. So I'm going to put it back to the 140, and I think he would definitely accept 140. I still want it less than that, but that would be my worst case. Now I've got to find a way that I can improve on this return on investment because it's just not a deal. I know I could take off the 8% down below. So let me go down there and just cheat a little. Shall I actually take the 8% off? I think what I'm going to do is take off just £5,000 because I don't really want to overdo it. I do want to have that contingency in there. So I'm going to take 5,000 off. What has that done to my figures? Oh, that return on investment is still there. Yes, I'm putting less money in, but I'm still not getting anywhere. This is the problem. This rent is the problem. That's what the tenant is paying. And quite frankly, this is where the current landlord has fundamentally failed to understand the point of investing in property. They have put this tenant in, I guarantee you, because I know the numbers, 3 years ago, and they have not increased the rent at all over the last 3 years. They should have been increasing the rent by 5 to 10%, in line with what the market is doing, but probably trailing slightly behind. We know the market rent in this area is £9.25. There's nearly a £200 gap. This landlord could have been making £200 a month more. That's £200 down here, 400 quid a month instead of 200 quid a month. No wonder they want to sell because they haven't been doing it right. Now, this tenant here, there is no way that this tenant is going to be able to go from £750 straight the way to, let's call it £850 to emphasize that 200 difference. The way that you know it is that your letting agent will do an assessment on a tenant about rent affordability. We cannot, as landlords, ethically or probably legally, put tenants into properties that they cannot afford to pay the mortgage. We're just creating a problem for ourselves, but also a problem for another human being. There comes a time where you have to say to someone, I'm sorry, the rent I want is $9.50. I'm not expecting any less than that. You can't afford it, and therefore you can't afford this house. I will continue to look for a tenant who can afford it. Of course, if you don't rent the property, you might have to adjust your rent. But let's look at what this does. If you put in $9.50, you will see that your cash flow increases, and you will see that the return on investment dramatically changes. Now look, we're at 7%. That's pretty close to my target figure of 8. I'm pretty close to my 300 figure here. In fact, I've exceeded it. I always would like, in an ideal world, to be spending no more than 60,000 on a property. I'd like to have an 8% return, and I'd like to have more than 300 a month. This property is almost there, but my tenant is not going to be able to afford a 200 jump, I'm sure. So like I was being realistic about my purchase price up here, let me change this to 850. Here we are. 850. Yes, my return on investment has dropped. I'm £7 below, but I know that in a year from now, I can put this up. I also know that I'm not spending a vast amount of money on repairs. I could simply keep this as the £2,000. What if I took this down? And you remember I said I only took off £5,000 to start with. What if I take off that 8? What if I make it that I've only got the budget simply to deal with the fences out the back? Now I'm up to 6%. I've hit my 60,000 target. I'm still just under my target for my cash flow. What if I fiddle with this a little bit more? What if I went 500? Would that do it? Would that get me over the line? It's got me over my cash flow line. It's got me to the amount of money I want in. I'm not quite there on my return on investment. Am I prepared to accept that on the basis that next year, let me show you, next year I would go up to quite probably in excess of 900. Next year I'd have the return. The year after, I would be there. So I could buy this property knowing that I'm going to get a 6% return on my money, but within 2 years, I'm going to get an 8% on my money. I know that my rent is going to increase every year, year on year, and I'm going to be happy with that. So that's the thinking that goes behind the spreadsheet. The last one I just want to show you, and I talked about more advanced techniques when I was analysing the properties. This one here in row E is a 2-bedroom property. It's a very similar price to this one here, but now we've got 2 flats, 2 one-bed flats. So 2 bedrooms, but split as 2 flats. So a flat generates, because it's basically your whole entire mini house, a greater rent than the simple house on its own. I've put the figures in quite low because I like to underestimate at £575 per 1-bed flat. So now I'm going to get £1,150, where even maximum rent on the other property, I would be getting £950. You can see the impact it has here on my cash flow and my return on investment. I put in a healthy budget for the repairs of £9,000. Because we're up at 150, we've got stamp duty, so those are more increased figures up the top. Take this one more leap, and when you're ready, and when you've got a little baseline of 3, 4, 5 buy-to-let properties, you can then start looking at bigger properties, bigger blocks. This is the only time I would buy a flat. If it is 2 flats complete with the freehold, or this big example, 7 flats including the freehold. And holding the freehold is the deciding factor. You need the entire lump and the freehold because you're then looking at it as one mortgageable property. It's going to take a lot of money in this. You're looking at over £200,000. You can see this is why something that you wouldn't go for as your first deal. You need the experience to build your confidence, and you need your experience to be able to take on 7 properties at once. There is a huge amount of deposit going in here because it's 25% of 450,000. You've got a huge amount going here in terms of your purchasing costs because of stamp duty. But actually this property here, 2 of the flats need to be refurbed. All of the others, I also viewed this property yesterday, they are fine. We've checked out the roof with a drone survey. All of them have just had their electrical certificates and any works needed carried out because the electrician was there yesterday. They'll have EPCs and gas certificates. And so my budget, I've put in £40,000 because what I've allowed for is 2 small kitchens and 2 full redecks, and new flooring. Bear in mind, these are only 1 or 2 bedroom flats. It's not a huge cost, but this is the cost for 2 of everything, except when we come down to the electrics and the plumbing, because I know that's already been taken care of, and I've still only got 1 gutter to deal with. So now what you're looking at is a total cash going in, something in the region of £220,000 going in as cash required, with a 13% return on investment. And look at the cash flow. One deal like this could give you 2,000, quite probably more, because the 2 new flats that will go out, instead of being gradual increases on current sitting tenants, if you like, or not sitting tenants, current tenants increasing their rent by the 5 or 10% a month, will be able to go straight out at the market rate. So we will probably get more rent than this, but I have kept the rent figures conservative. You could be making £2,500 a month net. What difference would that make to your lifestyle? What difference would that make to your financial future and your ability to start thinking through those first steps as a transition towards escaping the 9 to 5? I'm just going to leave you with those thoughts. I just want to explain that part about yield to COC, cash on cash. We used yield originally as a gross figure to sort of locate a broad area in the country. It's a bit like saying, I'm hungry, I want to eat. There's not enough information there to make a clear decision on the food that you want to buy. You're going to find a lot of property people will talk about yield, this high level figure. But actually, cash on cash specifically calculates the actual cash that an investor receives each year. Now, I often interchange the term with ROI, which means return on investment. So technically, is a slight difference between the two. If you're already an investor, you'll know that. But for our first endeavours, I'm going to leave them as being interchangeable. Cash on cash is the annual pre-tax cash flow, so your rent minus all the expenses, divided by the actual cash that you needed to buy the property. And by considering the cash needed to get into the property at the point that is rented and dividing it by your total net income, you get to see your annualized return. This means that you can more accurately compare different properties, but not only different properties, different investments across different types, from your return from crypto to shares to property investing. Now, one way to think about this is that, let's say my bank is offering 4% as a return on my savings, but a specific house might offer me 8%. Now I can make a decision about whether I want 4% on my money in the bank or whether I want to put that same money into a property and, after my expenses, get an 8% return. Now, the more detailed calculation in cash on cash means that you get an even more accurate comparison on the different properties, because you're considering the refurbishment costs, not just the gross purchase price. So if we considered 2 houses, what you might have is 2 identical houses next door to one another. In house A, they have completely renovated it. In house B, you're looking at a probate or a repossession or an ex-rental, and it needs work. So when you consider the 2 houses, property A is really just going to be about paying the purchase price and you're ready to rent. Property B is going to require 10, 20, maybe £30,000 worth of refurbishment costs. That's going to affect your return. Now, in the video, I analysed 3 or 4 different deals live for you, so you could see exactly how I think. And so you can pause, as I've said to you, copy my example, or you can download the template with the link that I have provided. And you can carry out your own property analysis now. So now you've seen my example, I want you to start a step-by-step deal analysis. And these are your action steps. Number 1, either create or open my deal analysis sheet on your own laptop. You'll be seeing it in Excel. What I want you to do is to start thinking about putting in the purchase price, the rental potential, you're looking at refurbishment costs, and I've given you some examples, and all of the expenses associated with renting a property. This will enable you to assess the cash flow and, I'm going to go back to that word, return on investment. You can run multiple scenarios to see which deal, which property best meets your investment needs. You can look at changing the purchase price. You can look at adapting your refurbishment costs. But let me just recap where we are so far on a broader term. You've got the workbook. You've got a link to initial assessment so that you could test your starting position, where you are, and then reassess your readiness to retire wealthy. At the back of the workbook, you've got resources like a property playlist. So from my property podcast, they will reinforce the lessons that are there. There's the values manual, the wealth tracker spreadsheet, and the assets and liability sheet so that you can understand your financial position. I've put in the glossary, and now you can see the link to the Deal Analyser in Excel spreadsheet. And you really need to make Excel your friend. Everyone is on a unique journey to financial freedom, and property can make the difference between now, later, or never. So let's think about what matters to you most. What's your goal? And do you want to retire? If so, when? So have a think of these questions now. Which applies to you? Do you need to gain control over when you retire? So you want to move from a position of uncertainty about your finances to clear, actionable steps that lets you replace your salary with a property cash flow so that you can retire on your terms. Maybe you're in a place where you want to replace your 9-to-5 paycheck, and you want to do that with a predictable cash flow. So you need to know your numbers. You need to understand your options, and you need to start building a property portfolio that funds your lifestyle so you can work when you want to, how you want to, and live how you want to. Maybe you want to create more financial clarity and freedom so that you can have the life that you deserve. You need to identify your resources. You need to leverage those savings into income-generating property portfolio, and then design that roadmap that lets you choose when and how you step away from the corporate grind. Maybe you want to design your own retirement timeline, that process that will allow you to transition from feeling trapped in your 9-to-5 to having a clear and flexible investment plan that gives you the freedom to retire earlier if you choose to, maybe to pursue your passion or start a business and work on your own terms. Or is it more about your savings and you want to turn those into a self-funding lifestyle? You can learn how to transform your savings into a property portfolio that produces cash flow, giving you that all-important financial independence and the freedom to live the life on your terms. Or are you feeling like corporate life is more of a treadmill and you want to be able to escape that with confidence? So now it's about understanding your financial position, leveraging those assets that you have strategically, and building a portfolio that replaces your salary over time so that you can choose the hours that you work, the location, and the lifestyle. And maybe you're in the position where you still don't feel that you can move forward because you've got questions and concerns. Let's go through those now. It might be things like time. Maybe you're thinking, I don't have enough time to learn property investing while working full time, or I need the results quickly and I don't want to have to wait years to see the cash flow. That's why I asked you to reevaluate all that we know, because in fact, you're right. Time is running out and you need to act now. Maybe your questions are around money. You're worried, I don't have enough capital to start investing in property, or investing seems risky and I could lose the lot. That's why I've helped you to explore the opportunities to make money and to make your money work harder so you don't have to. Any form of investing is a risk if you don't have the right support. What support do you have right now, and who's got your back? And if no one's got your back now, then you need to make sure that that changes. Is it about the effort that this is going to take? Maybe you're thinking, it sounds complicated and I'm worried I'll make mistakes, or I already have a demanding job. I can't manage property on top of this. This is why we looked at the different approaches, the different techniques for investing in property, and considered the time they required and the success outcome and the risk level that went with that. And that's why I love the Simple Brick Bank, a little 3-bed house rented to families that enables you to leverage your money, save time by using the letting agent and my team, and make your money work hard for you so you don't have to work hard. Is there a little bit there about belief? I'm not sure I'm capable of making this transition. Or I don't believe property is any better than stocks, crypto, or other options. Ultimately, this is your choice. I'm not a financial advisor, as I said to you. My goal from this course is to get you asking better questions of yourself and of others, to consider if all that you have been told is relevant. And if you have the right language, you can ask a better question so you can choose the best path for you. We all are different. Property investing, with or without my help, will be appropriate for some people and not for others. I'm going to leave that for you to decide. But it might also be the sort of question around, I might fail and regret leaving my corporate job, or I'm too late to invest in property, the market's too competitive. You might regret leaving your corporate job. You might regret staying in it. Life is about recognizing opportunities when they appear. And then, as our last step, I've asked you to turn that theory into action. And best of all, I'm here to help you in any way I can. Whether you want to go it alone, whether you need my support as a mentor, or simply want me to step in and get the ball rolling, I can help. The bottom line is, if your resources are scarce, your time, then you need to leverage your money. If your knowledge and your time is scarce, then you need to leverage my 20 years of knowledge and learn alongside me as I do it for you. If your money is scarce, you need to understand what is yours and what it's really doing, what interest you're earning, and how you can generate cash flow that you can leverage it without risk. Where you are on the grid in terms of time, money, resources, and knowledge is up for you to decide. I asked right at the beginning of the workbook for you to take an audit to record your results. Now it's time to take that audit again and to assess your readiness to retire wealthy for the first time if you want to. The personalised report that you get from the audit will guide you towards the next steps that you can take. I've shared the entire process with you, from pre-purchase preparation to finding and analysing a deal. And if this is something that you're ready to do, then I am offering you a sponsored 30-minute call. I've set aside time in my diary to make sure that I can help as many people as possible in corporate roles make that transition, frankly, before it's too late, before the robots get you, and if they don't get you, before old age gets you. And on that note, I'm sure that you found lots of things to think about in this video, just as I promised. You can take the audit and assess your readiness to retire wealthy, and then, if appropriate, book a call and let me help you. Until we speak again, I wish you a wealthy life, one where you spend your time doing what you love with those that matter most to you.